Welcome, students. This lecture is on Sophocles' Antigone. We'll conclude the part of the course that deals with ancient Greek literature. It also is the third play of a trilogy of plays written by Sophocles, the first of which was Oedipus Tyrannus, which we read and discussed. The second play was Oedipus at Colonus, which I've talked about, which finds Oedipus in some ways just finding some sort of self-awareness. It's an interesting play, but a little too much for this course to deal with. We go to the third of the plays, Antigone, which concludes this cycle. We should recognize that Creon was a character who appeared in Oedipus Tyrannus. He is Jocasta's brother, and so therefore the uncle of Antigone is Ismene, also the uncle of Polynices and Eteocles. The four children, all of whom wind up tragically, right, in a terrible situation. Again, the offspring of extremity, the offspring of people who transgress, who seek to overturn the gods, who deny the gods, who are prideful, hubristic, and this is the offspring that we get and their fate. So what we should recognize about the beginning of this play is that prior to what's happened, the throne of Thebes was shared 6 months at a time, but first by Eteocles and then by Polynices. The upshot of the situation is that Eteocles refuses to give up the throne. So Polynices, of course, he does so because he's the child of a tyrant, right? Polynices goes and builds an army and marches upon Thebes and tries to take over by force. The two of them kill each other. And so there is no ruler, right? There's no king. This morning, this day, the day on which this play takes place, Creon is already in power because there's no heir, right? And he's the brother of Jocasta. So he takes over, and he's made a decree that Eteocles should have proper burial, and Polynices' body, because he was a traitor to the city, should lie on the ground and be eaten by animals, by birds, by carrion. This is an affront, of course, to burial rites that are acknowledged all over the Greek world and Greek culture. They're sacred, as a matter of fact. The question whether Creon has a right to this is an open one. In my opinion, I think there's probably very little argument that Creon can make. And Antigone will make a bunch of arguments against this. So what I want to suggest, what I've posted a couple of notes, one of which is a fairly complex diagram. It should keep with you. It's the outline of conflicts, right? And the major conflict in the middle is between Antigone and Creon. There are other conflicts all over the place that involve other besides Antigone and Creon, other characters, but also um, there are conflicts of ideas that are very important. And what is interesting is the way in which these conflicts are given a kind of content um, and a religious significance. So Antigone will appeal to Hades, right? The god Hades, who demands upon death the spirit or the soul of the dead person. And the way that occurs is to have the body buried, right? This is symbolic but also significant, right? The fact that you literally place the body underground and bury the body is literal but also significant in the sense that it releases the spirit of the person. So Hades has claims over the dead and is the ruler of the dead. Out on top of the land, the god of the land and the air is Zeus. Zeus is all powerful when it comes to the living. The third great god who has power, absolute power over his realm, is Poseidon, god of the sea. So there are liminal places, liminal meaning there are marginal places where one of these realms intersects with the other. The very ground is one of those liminal places. So Polynices, also the coastlands, because of the nature of the sea and its ability to destroy the coastland, right? So Poseidon, and those are disputed lands. The coastlands are kind of disputed. That very edge of the land between sea and land, those are disputed areas. The ground itself, where the dead lie, and where the living assume responsibility for the dead, is also one of those liminal places. So the fact that Polynices is lying on the ground suggests eating the dead person has some kind of, the body at least, still above the ground, right? Zeus has some sort of claim there. However, being dead, Hades has some sort of claim there. So Polynices' body is really the source of dispute between Antigone and Creon. Their personal interests and desires, which we'll see, are bound up with competing sets of rights and claims that have both a religious significance and a political significance. Okay, so to make the claims that Antigone does, and make claims that Creon does, they're claims of a personal nature, but they go beyond personal, and they are caught up in what the Greeks would see as kind of cosmic forces. So all of the religious arguments that are made between, by the way, Haman is involved in this too, and he's in the middle, right? Because Haman is betrothed to Antigone, but also the son of Creon. So talk about being pulled in two different places, right? So he's got another element here, and that's family. And I folded, in this order of conflict, I folded the family into the state, because it's the city-state in this culture is a really just an extension of the family. They're small, closely knit. Everybody can consider themselves as pretty much kin in a way. So the religious arguments, competing claims between the rights of Hades and the rights of Zeus. Antigone appeals to Hades because it's her brother, and family have duties to bury the dead. Right? Zeus is the god that Creon appeals to because Zeus is the authority, the religious authority who sanctions kingly rule. So the political arguments deal with the relationship between the claims of the family and the claims of the state. These are issues that are still with us, family claims that families might make against the state, claims that the state might make against families. So there's a competing set of interests. Creon, of course, sides with the state. Antigone sides with the family. The personal conflicts then between Antigone and Creon, Creon and Tiresias, and Creon and Haman. So Antigone and Creon is the political, religious conflict. Creon and Tiresias, largely religious. And Creon and Haman, that's a kind of state and family dispute. Out of these conflicts comes a central problem. Sorry, that was a particularly, I don't know if you heard, particularly obnoxious motorcycle playing really loud music. I don't know if it came through on the microphone, but sorry about that if it did. So the question is how to justify legal authority. Creon appeals to what's called conventional law. I'll define this. Antigone appeals to what's called natural law. Each of these has its own problems that I'll try to articulate. They have their own sets of justifications that are within their own realm, certainly rational and reasonable, but at points these two can come into conflict with one another. The other issue is that these are, because of their nature as political, they are theories or justifications for law which don't exist in a vacuum, but are always advanced by human beings. So, that being said, they can be distorted, or they can be bent to their own, to the purpose, to the person who wields them to their own purpose. They come with particular dangers. Someone wielding these arguments can do so in a way that's dangerous, not only to themselves but to others as well. It's a remarkable play in the sense that all of these issues are explored in a profound way in the context of human action and in the context of human decision making. So the dramatization of these philosophical theories and ideas in the context of a political battle is what's so tremendously powerful. It's very hard to write a work of literature, and I would say especially a play, that dramatizes ideas in such a powerful way and does so without turning the characters themselves into kind of cardboard cutout figures, kind of mouthing particular ideas. So to give these ideas dramatic power and dramatic heft and weightiness shows, I think, the real tremendous aesthetic genius and deep philosophical thought of a writer like Sophocles. I'm not sure which play I prefer, Oedipus, Tyrannus, or Antigone. It probably depends on which one I'm teaching. But there's something truly remarkable about this play that transcends anything that I think I could add to it. Remarkable thing. So again, the opening scene begins with Antigone and Ismene in a debate. Sorry, I got something in my eye. In a debate over what to do about Polynices' body. Creon has just decreed that nobody should bury Polynices' body, but in fact, what has happened is that Antigone has gone outside the city walls in the dark and has sprinkled just enough dust and dirt over the body as to provide a kind of burial. So she has violated Creon's law. That's the source of the conflict. Antigone has violated the law that Creon has established to not give Polynices a burial because he's a traitor. Okay, so this begins with Antigone. We see her personality right up front to Ismene. Now show your true colors. Are you true to your birth or a coward? That already pits the question that Antigone is raising in terms of family. Are you true to your birth? Are you going to be loyal to your brother? Or are you going to be disloyal to your brother and not give him a proper burial because you're a coward? Ismene, I'll obey the men in charge. My mind will never aim too high, too far. Ismene will not violate Creon's law. She is, depending on how you want to read her, depending on how an actor would portray her, she is either reasonable or simply fearful, or both, but probably one or the other. Antigone, from what it suggested, is very headstrong. Ismene seems to have become cowed by men. Antigone responds, I wouldn't even let you help me if you had a change of heart. After Ismene says, no, I'm not going to do it. So the sense that, Ismene, this is it. This is your last chance. After Ismene responds once more. Antigone says, I will have a noble death and lie with him. Lines 72 and 73. I will have a noble death and lie with him, a dear sister with a dear brother. Call it a crime of reverence, but I must be good to those who are below. I will be there longer than with you. That's where I will lie. You keep to your choice. Go on insulting what the gods hold dear. I will suggest already two things about Antigone, which I have come to believe, and this is an interpretation, but the text, I think, bears me out. That sense that she owes more to the dead than the living suggests already she wants to die. I will have a noble death and lie with him. All right. she has a kind of martyr complex. I think her life has been one of suffering, and she would prefer to be dead. So there's a kind of martyr complex here at work, a kind of wish to be with the family, wish to be with Polynices. The I and lie with him has sexual connotations. Again, this is an interpretation, but it's borne out by the Greek language. When she says this may be a crime of reverence, I think she recognizes, Antigone recognizes there's a kind of transgression here. And to further it, she wants Ismene to tell everybody that it's her that buried Polynices, so she will be punished with death. The crime is, you'll be more enemy to me if you are silent. Proclaim it to the world. All right. So Ismene, who seems to recognize something about the relationship between Antigone and Polynices, says, Antigone says, it pleases those who matter most. I think meaning Polynices. Yes, if you had the power, but you love the impossible. So those who matter most are the dead or the gods of the dead. And you love the impossible. Notice the note at the bottom of page 4. More accurately, perhaps you long for the impossible. But the verb is the same as the one used for sexual love. You want to have sex with the impossible. Is a way of, you erotically desire the impossible. Ismene is suggesting that Polynices and Antigone have had an incestual relationship. And I think that, again, everything that happens in this play and unfolds in this play is suggestive of that. So why not? I mean, I'm not saying why not. Why? I mean, this is a good idea, but look at how they're the product of Jocasta and Oedipus, right? This kind of thing breeds this kind of, these things are bred this way. So that whatever is, it's the transgression has been transmitted. And again, for whatever, however one wants to articulate this, right? Christianity has a form of articulation of this as a form of original sin, right? Original sin transmits sin from one person to another. But the Greeks, I think, had this sense that faults are transmitted. How? Through the parents and through their behavior. We imitate our parents without even knowing it, before we have a clue of what we're doing. We don't choose our behaviors. They are given to us. And our job is either to claim them or not. If there are certain aspects of our behavior that we don't like, well, our job is to eradicate them. It's not an easy business because they're habitual and heavily ingrained in us, frequently done so through trauma, through suffering. So how does one emerge from this? Well, this is the question that Sophocles has written into this play, right? The way this form of guilt is transmitted through the family line. It's a background story. It's a background part of this, but Sophocles is aware of these things. It's not going to be resolved in this, but it's just simply there. Okay. So Antigone ends this: your brother will take you to him as his enemy. So Polynices, when they get to the land of the dead, will deny her. Right. So Antigone is really playing upon this loyalty thing, and possibly takes it too far. Why? Because her own relationship with Polynices has gone too far. Right. So that's the battle line between family between family rights and the demand to bury Polynices. Is Creon and Antigone in conflict here? All right, enter Creon. And remember Creon claiming he didn't not want to be tyrant in Oedipus Tyrannus because he had everything he wanted without the duties of the tyrant. Well, Creon seems to echo this now at 175, line 175. No man has a mind that can be fully known in character or judgment till he rules and makes laws. So Creon's refusal or denial that he wanted to be tyrant is not enough to insulate him against the temptations of a tyrant. So what he's saying here is that, unless you really have the ability to do whatever you want, well, you don't know whether you will be just or not. So the Greeks never wanted to find that out because for them, it just naturally led to corruption. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So Creon seems to, I don't know how one reads this, This is a play, so think of an actor saying these words. Does he do it with a sense of worry and fear? No one can possibly know the situation I'm in, or no one can know, no one can know what my mind is like, You can't tell what you're going to do until you become king. And is he proud here? How does an actor present that? It's an interesting question. The choices there. I think it can't be both. You can't be overconfident, confident in yourself, and be a little bit fearful and be worried now. But at any rate, it does show in either way that Creon's words in Oedipus Tyrannus, he did not fully understand what he was saying. Right? What we do know is Creon will become a tyrant in the exercise of this rule. It's unclear whether he is now or whether he does so forced. That's a good question. So his decree is articulated at 192 to 206, lines 192 to 206, pages. Bottom of page 8 and into page 9. The decree again, you will not bury Polynices under pain of death. His purported reason is because he's a traitor, and traitors deserve to die. And if you bury Polynices, you must be on the side of being a traitor. You must be a traitor yourself, so you deserve to die. The principle that's invoked is that the state's concern for unity and peace circumvents or any claim that the family might make. One might even go so far as to say that family rights have to be sacrificed to the state. The individual is subsumed under the state, right? This will have terrible consequences for Creon, as we'll see. Never, he says, while I rule, will a criminal be honored higher than a man of justice. So he's allowing the dogs and the birds to eat this body. This is a terrible, terrible affront to the family. And again, the only people that are left are Ismene and Antigone. Again, the sacrifice of family to the state is one that is extreme, absolute here for Creon. We'll see he gets pushes himself into a corner, really. But one might even say that Creon might have a duty to Polynices too. If he thought about it, he could say, "Look, I'm not with traitors, but he's my son, he's my nephew. I gotta bury him." People would have paid attention to that. As it turns out, no one in the city even agrees with him. So we'll find this out later. So it's not just the claim, the way it's made, and we'll delve into this when we get into the discussion between Antigone and Creon. All right, a watchman shows up and says, "Hey, guess what? Someone's violated your decree." He's afraid to even tell Creon because of Creon's temper and anger. And Creon does get angry right away. So people seem to know Creon. They know he's going to get angry. They fear him. Creon makes a religious claim now for his refusal to bury Polynices. And that is that the gods do not honor traitors. This is at 280 to 289. And one has to question this, I think. Does he know that? Is there some absolute rule that by which traitors are not to be honored by the gods? I suppose there's probably some argument that could be made. But can Creon make it? Creon's just a ruler. Creon's a ruler over civic rule. He gets his authority from Zeus, but that doesn't mean he has religious sanction. The power, the right to burial has political ramifications, right? You don't want to have a lot of dead bodies laying around because that'll create pestilence and plague. So it's the state's duty to make sure that enemies are buried properly, so they don't bring disease about. But the rights of a family to bury are their own. That's not the state's determination, at least in Greek culture. Again, the absolute claim of is what puts Creon in trouble. Does he have the authority to do that? Absolutely. That's an open question. If that's an open question, then it's not an absolute claim, and he shouldn't make it absolutely. That's the real problem with Creon's side. It's the real problem with Antigone's side too. They forget that they're individuals. Even if Creon does have power as the king, he doesn't have power over the gods. All right? The watchman has every reason to fear him. He starts accusing the watchman of complicity with it. You must have seen it. You must have done it. You didn't see someone do it. You're hiding it. He becomes tyrant right away. He's unjust, accusing people without evidence. This is the work of a tyrant. So notice the progression in the argument very quickly. State is absolute. Religious prerogatives are absolutely overturned. And that's a form of tyranny. When the political completely makes claims over and against the religious, you've got a form of tyranny. And it's not, and we'll see that this is especially problematic for Creon. Okay. All right, the first chorus comes in, the first stasimon, at lines 332. And again, page 14. The chorus has a role of comment, and it's their view of human nature. And it's a remarkable image. Human beings conquer nature. Human beings can take the forces of nature and harness them for their own goods. We create buildings and wealth out of nature because of our intellect and our hands, our ability to use our intellect and our hands. So we conquer nature. We can build things, make things. We can create laws for ourselves, but we cannot conquer death, he says. We cannot conquer death. So this is a problem, right? This is a problem. Is this a comment about Creon? Perhaps. So the issue of death, that always looms. And so because of that, absolute claims we make about anything here on earth, well, they're not so absolute. Okay, so it could be a warning to Creon. All right, Creon and Antigone now. Antigone at 450 rejects Creon's laws. She denies that Creon's law is Zeus's command. Does Zeus ever command that traitors not be given a proper burial? That's her claim. She argues that the burial of the dead is based upon unwritten laws. This is extremely important. 457. Again, these are not laws that human beings make. They're laws that everybody must respect. And because they're unwritten laws, they're written in the natural realm. Everybody has a right to bury their kin, no matter what they did. You don't have a right to defile their bodies. The kin have a right to bury them not only because it's a religious right, but also because it allows one to grieve. The whole act of a funeral, all of those rituals that are performed are absolutely important as a way of releasing one from to live, to go on and live. Creon is actually impeding her from living and is actually pushing her more towards despair and suicide. Zeus does not command it. Zeus does not have a right over the dead, is her claim. They're unwritten laws. Again, the point here, the word the term that's used here is natural law. Now, natural laws aren't written in nature, right? It's not like there's a sign that says do not kill. But do not kill, what person in their right mind would argue against that? Right? Do not murder. I guess you could, killing in self-defense. Don't murder an innocent person. You don't walk up to somebody and kill them. I think most of us would agree you don't walk up and strike somebody in the face for no reason. Is it written on their face, don't hit me? No. It's people acknowledge it. It's an objective law that's part of being a human being. The word natural is a bit of a misnomer. It's objective. To deny it is not simply deny a legal authority. It's to violate a person's rights as a person. It inheres in human beings. All right, so that's the point she's making. It's an unwritten law. That's the kind of law she's appealing to. She's on the side of a natural law. right? And she's claiming that Creon is making this up, making this decree up in violation of that natural law. Creon's response is that Antigone broke established laws, right? Who established them? Creon did. Does he have a right? Sure. As the ruler, does he have a right to undermine unwritten natural laws? No, he doesn't. He does not. Conventional law is not absolute. Conventional law would be, maybe there'd be certain, you better bury the dead within 3 days. There's certain rules that you have to abide by for sanitary purposes, right? To bury the dead, right? Something like that, okay? So that's a convention. But it doesn't circumvent the right to bury the dead, okay? She broke established law. So I'm going to post on the course webpage for your edification, Martin Luther King's letter written from a Birmingham jail, in which he makes the same claim that to violate a law that's unjust is not a crime, but in fact a demand of the higher laws. Martin Luther King appealed to natural law over and against the conventional laws of segregation of blacks in the 1950s and 1960s. Right? Because of his resistance, the laws got changed. His and others. It's a fascinating argument that he makes in there. I'll post that just for your edification. So he appeals to Creon appeals to what's called conventional law. Can he change it? Yeah. Can you change the laws against burial? The normal laws against burial? For burial? No. It strikes me Antigone's in the right, at least in the principle here. All right. So she says Hades longs to have these laws obeyed. And 19. What's amazing is that in just 3 lines, Sophocles dramatizes a whole, almost the key set of principles here that we have to think about when we deal with conventional law and natural law. Hades longs to have these laws obeyed, but surely not equal treatment for good and bad. Well, just because you're bad, you don't deserve a burial. Okay? Well, who knows? I mean, but that's the problem, right? And Antigone says it. Who knows? Down below that might be blessed. Down below that might be blessed. Might be. So notice, for the purposes of the argument here, she is backing off a bit. And Creon ought to recognize that and say, so you're not defending the traitor position, But no, Creon just goes right for the jugular. An enemy is always an enemy, even in death, he says. And Antigone says, I cannot side with hatred. My nature sides with love. She will violate that. She comes to despise this meaning. because Ismene won't join her, and then rejects Ismene. It shows that her love for Polynices is probably unnatural. So Antigone lets desire get in the way. Creon does too. Creon forgets that he has made the law. Once he's made it, it's there for him. Okay, so again, I think here we've got an issue where Antigone kind of lets Creon have an opening. Creon doesn't take it. Antigone then, I think, overshoots her bounds of what she really desires, right? And maybe exposes her a little bit. Her nature sides with love. It's not entirely true. So one should recognize that personal desires always play a role in one's marshaling of principles. And again, what's brilliant about Sophocles is that he dramatizes. If you're going to appeal to a principle, recognize your own interests. The only thing we can do there is acknowledge them up front. Creon seems blind to that. Antigone seems blind to the nature of her own desire, and kind of, I think, overshoots the boundaries there. All right, we have Creon and Antigone and Ismene. My nature sides with love. She immediately undermines that when Ismene appears. Ismene wants to share her fate. She refuses. Ismene has decided to side with love, to side with her sister, and Antigone refuses her. She claims that Ismene is not even a blood relation. You can't do that. Sorry, your blood is your blood. You may not like them. They might be disloyal to you. But you can't renounce their blood relationship. So Antigone violates her own principle. Her own desires undermine her principle here. And it's clear, I think the language she uses suggests what she really desires is death. She says, now leave my death alone. It's at line 547. So the second stasimon with the chorus comes in at line 582 and following. It laments Oedipus's line, which will end right here. This is it. These four are done. Actually, Ismene lives. I'm not quite sure what the tradition has it with her, if she actually lives and has offspring. I'm not really sure about that. Be an interesting thing. I've never looked at that, actually. There's a critique then of hubris. Madness stalks mortals who are great, leaves no escape from disaster. Creon? Probably. Antigone? Probably. Okay, so the tragedy here is madness creeps upon those who are great. Comes up. All right, so I'm going to stop this lecture there, and actually, no, I'll take a couple more minutes, and I'll introduce Creon and Haman, and then that'll probably take us up to about 55 minutes, maybe, or an hour, and then the rest, probably half an hour to 45 minutes with the rest. Haman comes in, and is probably the only reasonable person in the bunch. Remember, he's got dual loyalties to his father and to his bride-to-be, which is Antigone. I get the sense that Haman is not only reasonable and rational, but loyal to both, loves both of them. This is a great figure, Haman. A really great figure, I think. Caught in the middle of a disaster. Right. So, I am yours, Father. supplicates himself. He comes as a son. And Creon immediately goes for the jugular and invokes loyalty to him. I'm your father, you do what I tell you to do. I must keep my kin in line. Otherwise, folks outside the family will run wild. Okay, the principle here that he's invoking may or may not be in violation of his own ideas, but what's the argument? The family is linked to the state. The state is an offshoot of the family. If I don't look like my family is towing the line, then nobody in the state will agree with me. Well, why is that true? Because there's a connection between family and state. Couldn't Creon start thinking about that then and say, maybe because there's this deep connection between family and state, maybe I should relax my law for Antigone? That's an open question. But notice Creon will make justifications without even thinking things through. He hasn't thought about the principle. Now Creon makes a very important argument about conventional law. He says, I have to abide by this rule. Once a law is established, it can't be broken. The ruler must be obeyed. Otherwise, people will lose respect for law. So if a bad law is made and it doesn't work, you stick with it forever. Right? No. It just shows that conventional law is conventional. It's not an absolute principle. It's based upon what works. Right? This law is not going to work. People will respect him if he says, I made a mistake. Aristotle, though, obviously a student of Sophocles, said something very interesting about conventional law. He said, at least in principle, once conventional law is established, it has to be treated absolutely. It has to be treated as though it were natural law. Otherwise, anarchy rules. And this is interestingly, the argument that Creon will make, right? So the problem with conventional law is that it forgets that it's conventional. It can forget it's conventional and lead to tyranny. Conventional law has to be put to the test of workability, universalizability, exceptions, right? So conventional law leads to tyranny. Here's the problem. It leads to tyranny without any way of correcting it. Because conventional law doesn't appeal to religious authority. It doesn't appeal to a higher authority. So you can't make a claim outside of the ruler. And this is one of the reasons why certain laws that are bad stay on the books. The Supreme Court has made that argument a number of times recently. So a ruler has to be obeyed, he says, whether his commands are trivial or right or wrong. Right? Is that really true? All the way down. Well, I guess if it's conventional law and you realize it's all made up, it's got to have the power of force. So this is why autocratic law really has to secure its authority with power, staring down the barrel of a gun. It's not based upon anything rational. It's not based upon anything natural. It's I say or else. And if And if one relaxes, it shows weakness, and it shows that it's simply conventional law. It can be changed, so anything can be changed. So notice conventional laws should be conventional laws should be promulgated for things that are done by convention, like street signs and sanitation, and questions of right and wrong that are very uh, um, of a kind of general nature. Those things have the force of sanction. So now the question is, what laws are like that? That's a huge claim, right? I can't go into that. Maybe there are. Maybe if you really push this, everything is conventional. Who knows? That's not the point. Does everybody want to say everything's conventional? Do we want to say Nazi Germany just did things properly according to their culture? I don't think anybody wants to say that. So that's the problem, though. But I think we have certain positions that we don't want to give up, right? So Haman, the purpose of it, again, this is so brilliant on Sophocles' part. The purpose of it is not right or wrong; it's order and peace. What happens when people don't like stuff and they start grumbling? Is that peace and order? So it's external order; it's not internal order. And again, he says that if it's rejected, anarchy will be let loose. Haman's strategy is reasonable. All human beings have good sense, he says. And then he says, you should go out in the streets, because if you ask everybody's on Antigone's side, not yours. So it won't lead to anarchy. You've done something unjust. You should listen to the people. And tyrants can be wrong. Laws can be wrong. They're made by human beings. So immediately, Creon starts insulting Haman. Oh, you've given yourself up to a woman, you pathetic, effeminate loser. Act like a man. But he insults him. And Haman accuses Creon now of becoming a tyrant. He says, a place for one man alone is not a city. Then go be ruler of a desert all alone. Those two lines are really important. He's basically telling Creon he's going to wind up alone. A tyrant will destroy others and create a total vacuum, right? So I'm going to leave off there. I'm about 2/3 of the way done. I'm going to stop this lecture now, post it, and start with another one. And they'll both be up by the, well, you'll see when they're up. Okay. I'll pick up at line 781 with the chorus.